And welcome back. And here's your latest California housing market update. Home prices in California have been nosediving ever since the highs we saw last year. So for example, in the San Francisco Bay Area, home prices or home sold prices have decreased by 35% since April last year. That's right, a decrease of 35% over the past 9 months alone. In today's video, I'm going to take a deep dive into home price trends in California by each of the major regions, as well as each of the counties as well here in California. And before we get started, if you guys are looking for a real estate agent referral, whether it's in California or virtually any parts of the whole United States, then check out homeandmoney.com/Jason to get started today. And with that said, let's begin today's video based on data from the California Association of Realtors using my own analysis. So take a look at this. Here's the data from the California Association of Realtors, and anything except for prices is my own analysis here. So look at this. The San Francisco Bay Area, the median sold price in January was $1 million flat, a decrease of 35% compared to the peak that we saw back in April when home prices or the median sold price was $1.54 million. Therefore, home prices have decreased by $540,000 ever since April last year. And by the way, this 35% decrease compared to the highs we saw back in April is actually worse than last month. As I reported to you guys 1 month ago, I made a separate video regarding that. We saw a decrease of 30% from April 2022 through December 2022. Now it's down by 35%. Additionally, at $1 million right now, this is the lowest levels for home sold prices since May of 2020. Therefore, the gains we saw in the second half of 2020, the entire year of 2021, the entire year of 2022, or I should say the first half of 2022, have been virtually wiped out due to this giant decrease in home prices down by 35%. And by the way, stay tuned here in just a little bit because I'm going to be sharing how each of these major regions here and the counties as well, how home prices changed over the past few years, going back to 1 year, 2 years, as well as 3 years. So one thing that really stood out to me regarding these trends right here is that out of these 7 major regions here in California, this is by far the biggest decrease in home prices from the peak we saw last year. In the LA Metro, home sold prices are only down by 13% compared to the highs we saw back in May. In the Central Coast, we're down by 15% compared to March of last year. The Central Valley, we're down by 15%. Compared to April 2022. And also in the far north, down by 14%. Inland Empire, the smallest decrease amongst these regions here, a decrease of 10% from the highs we saw back in May. And in SoCal, a decrease of 13% from the highs we also saw in May as well, going from 845,000 to 738. But of course, there's more, right? Because I actually wanted to look at the home price changes compared to 1 year ago, compared to 2 years ago, as well as compared to 3 years ago. Of course, 3 years ago is pre-COVID, back in January of 2020, just before the onset of the pandemic here. So look at the San Francisco Bay Area. When comparing home sold prices compared to 1 year ago, again, January 2022 through January 2023, a decrease of 17%. Compared to 2 years ago, it's a decrease of 5%. So home sold prices in the San Francisco Bay Area are less than they were compared to 2 years ago, down by 5%. But compared to 3 years ago, back in January of 2020, they're still up by 17%. Of course, not surprisingly here, this is actually the smallest increase over the past 3 years. In fact, the biggest increase in contrast is actually in Inland Empire, a gain of 40% over the past 3 years, and a gain of 18% over the past 2 years. Also, when looking at home sold prices compared to 12 months ago, the Central Coast decrease of 3%, the Central Valley down by 7%, the Far North down by 3%, and of course, San Fran or the San Francisco Bay Area down by 17%. But in the LA Metro, Inland Empire, as well as SoCal, virtually flat compared to 12 months ago. I added this to my analysis because a common question I get is, Jason, are we going to get to pre-COVID levels anytime soon? Are we going to get to home prices we saw back in 2021 anytime soon? So hope this helps you guys in kind of determining that, because The gains we've been seeing over the past couple of years have been pretty eye-opening, but as you can see right here, some of these markets, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, huge decreases in the second half of 2022. One last thing I do want to touch on regarding trends we're seeing right now regarding each of these major regions before I talk about each of these counties here. There's some crazy numbers here ahead. LA Metro at 700,000, the lowest levels since January 2022. The Central Coast, the lowest level since October 2021. Also in the Central Valley, where my team and I work as real estate agents in Sacramento, at 425,000, the lowest level since March of 2021. Also in the far north, the lowest levels since March as well in 2021. In stark contrast though, Inland Empire recorded a small increase compared to last month, going from 535,000 to 540,000. Again, in the San Francisco Bay Area, the lowest levels since May of 2020, whereas SoCal, the lowest level since March of 2021. And my apologies, these are based on the median sold price for existing single-family houses only. It excludes multifamily, of course, and of course it excludes brand new construction houses as well. And again, this entire section here is based on my own analysis using the California Association of Realtors data for home prices. Okay, let's first talk about what's happening right now statewide very, very briefly. Then I'm going to touch on each of the counties here that the California Association of Realtors tracks here, because there's some crazy numbers here. So in California, again, for existing single-family detached houses only, the median sold price was $751,330. This is actually the lowest levels going back to February 2021, where at that time, home sold prices on average were at $699,000. Also, when looking at prices as of this January compared to the peak was set in May 2022 at $900,000. Now it's only $751,000. That's a decrease of 17% or almost $150,000. Compared to 1 year ago, prices are down by 2%, only up by 7% from January 2021, and an increase of 31% over the past 3 years. So that's statewide. Let's have a look at Alameda County, which is actually just east of San Francisco. The median sold price is $1,065,000, tied for last month, also at $1,065,000. But this is actually a 2-year low though, going back to January 2021, when the median sold price in Alameda County was $1,060,000. And also when looking at home sold prices compared to the peak last year, which was actually set in May last year, home prices have decreased by 31%, or a giant decrease of $480,000, which by the way, that's actually more than the median sold price nationwide. Also in Alameda County, a decrease of 15% year over year, home prices flat compared to January 2021. So home price gains we saw in 2021, as well as the first half of 2022, have been virtually wiped out due to the fact that home prices in Alameda County have been decreasing ever since June last year. Also in Contra Costa County, which is just east of San Francisco, they're seeing a decrease of 30% from the highs seen in April last year, going from $1,050,000 to $736,500. Additionally, at $736,000, this is actually the lowest levels going back to May of 2020. In El Dorado County, which is just east of Sacramento, home sold prices had decreased by 24% compared to the peak last year, going from $750,000 to $567,000. And at $567,000, it hasn't been this low since December of 2020. They're also negative compared to 1 year ago, of course, and also compared to 2 years ago as well, but still up by 28% compared to January of 2020. In Fresno, $375,000. It's tied for the lowest levels for home sold prices since August 2021, and down by 12% from the peak seen in April 2022. One thing that's very important to keep in mind when looking at this data right here is that some markets, such as Del Norte, fluctuate greatly on a month-to-month basis, or can fluctuate greatly on a month-to-month basis. And that's potentially due to a smaller sample size, which causes larger fluctuations in home sold prices month to month. In Los Angeles County, we're at the lowest levels going back to February 2022, a 13% decrease compared to the highs as well, which was seen in September last year, down by 13%, which equates to $113,000 a decrease. Down 3% compared to 1 year ago, but up compared to 2 years ago, up by 12%. In Marin County, take a look at this. This is pretty wild. Marin County is actually just north of San Francisco. Look at this. The median sold price, 1.201, 1,201,000. This is actually the lowest levels going back to January of 2019, which is absolutely mind-blowing. The gains we saw for home prices in Marin County that we saw in 2019, 2020, 2021, as well as the first half of 2022 have been wiped out due to home prices decreasing in the second half of 2022. And in fact, when comparing home sold prices compared to the peak, which was set in April last year, going from 2.1 to 1.2 million, that's a giant decrease of 43%, or a whopping decrease of $911,000 compared to April last year, as you can see right there. Also, look at this, because home price gains have been wiped out over the past 3 years, down 17% year over year, down 11% over the past 2 years, and down 7% compared to 3 years ago. And again, at 1.2 million right now, the lowest levels going back to January of 2019. In contrast, in Monterey County, they actually saw a small increase going from 775,000 to 850,000 last month. But compared to the peak, which was in July 2022, they're down 8%. Compared to 1 year ago, down 3%. Also compared to January 2021, down 1%. But when looking at home sold prices from 3 years ago, they're still up by 31%. In Napa County, there's some fairly big fluctuations on a month-to-month basis in that county, but the current levels right now at 790,000. It hasn't been this low since October of 2020. Also, when looking at home sold prices compared to the peak, which was in August last year in Napa, that's a decrease of 32%. Also, they're negative compared to 1 year ago, as well as compared to 2 years ago, and only up by 13% from 3 years ago. In Orange County, this is kind of an anomaly here because the median sold price has increased for 2 consecutive months in Orange County, just under $1.2 million. Compared to the peak, though, down by 10% compared to April last year, flat compared to 1 year ago, but huge gains of over 20% compared to 2 years ago, and a gain of 40% over the past 3 years. In Placer County, we're seeing small increases over the past 2 months in a row as well, going from 620,000 back in November, now it's 625,000. Compared to the peak though, which was in May last year, they're down by 15%, only down by 7% compared to 1 year ago. In Riverside County, a lot of people ask about Riverside on the channel here, a slight increase from 575,000 to 585,000 and down 10% from the peak. The peak was at 650,000 set in May 2022, a decrease of 65%, more or less flat compared to 1 year ago, but huge gains compared to the past couple of years. In Sacramento, we did see a slight increase compared to December, but still down by 14% from the highs we saw in May last year. Down compared to 1 year ago, but we're still up by 31% from 3 years ago. San Diego, a lot of people ask about San Diego. The median sold price this January, $824,950. It hasn't been this low going back to March of 2021, which is right here at 800,000 even back in March 2021. Also, when looking at the levels compared to the peak, which was also back in April last year, down 15%. And that's a decrease of $150,000. But having said that, we're still up by double digits from 2 years ago and up by 25% from January of 2020. Here's San Francisco though, look at this. 1.385 million is the median sold price this January. It hasn't been this low since, wait for it, January of 2019. Therefore, the gains we saw in 2019 through the first half of 2022 have been wiped out due to the huge decrease ever since then. A decrease of 33% from the highs we saw back in March last year, going from 2,060,000 to just under 1.4 million. One thing I do want to mention though is that we do tend to see quite a bit of fluctuation regarding home sold prices in the San Francisco area or San Francisco County, as you can see right here, because at 1.385 million last month, it was 1.564. But as you can see here, kind of some pretty large fluctuations in home sold prices on a month-to-month basis. Now, having said that, when looking at home sold prices over the past several years, down 15% year over year, down 17% from January 2021, and still down 5% over the past 3 years. We're also seeing huge decreases in San Mateo, which is just south of San Francisco, a decrease of 32% from April last year, which equates to a decrease of $776,000. 1 year ago, down by 19%, fairly flat from 2 years ago, and only an increase of 14% from 3 years ago. Additionally, at 1,625,000, we haven't seen home prices this low in San Mateo going back to January of 2021. In contrast, in Santa Clara, home prices rose slightly from just under 1.5 million. Now they're 1.53 million. Compared to the peak though, which was in April last year, a lot of these are in April, a decrease of 12%. Compared to 1 year ago, down by 11%, and compared to 2 years ago, up by 11%. In Santa Cruz County, where I went to college at UC Santa Cruz, 1.17 million, the lowest levels going back to October 2021. Compared to the peak, which was in March 2022, down 27%. And a decrease of 7% compared to 1 year ago. Now, having said that, still up by 35% from 3 years ago. In Ventura County, the median sold price is $815,000, tied for the lowest levels going back to September 2021. Compared to the peak, they're down 15%, which was back in April last year, going from $955,000 to $815,000. Year over year, down 4% compared to 2 years ago, up by 5%, and a gain of 23% over the past 3 years. In regards to condos statewide here in California, the median sold price at $580,000, the lowest levels going back to April 2021. Also compared to the peak, which was also in April last year, a decrease of 17%. Also a decrease of 3% from 1 year ago, but still up by double digits compared to 2 years ago as well as 3 years ago. And with that said, please comment below with your biggest takeaways from today's video. Also, if you guys got any value in this video whatsoever, I greatly appreciate it if you guys like it, comment, and share, because this video, especially compared to other videos, take me hours to make. In any case, hope you guys have an awesome day. I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next video.